Welcome back to Brew on Tap. Our guest is Megan Mackay-Hall. She is the British Columbia sales manager of Big Rock Brewery. What a pleasure to see you. I've known you for a minute or two, have I not? I think we've had the odd beer here and there.
A little bit, yeah, a couple.
And you've kind of traversed the province in terms of like beer sales. You're now with Big Rock. Big Rock is a company obviously based out of Alberta, but making a big splash in British Columbia. What is your take when you look at the beer scene today, where we sit here in now 2017? Are you blown away by it, or are you just thinking, well, I guess it was kind of a natural evolution to get to this point?
No, I guess natural evolution, but when I first started selling beer in BC, I had no idea that it would be this big. Because when I first started, I think my main competition was 5 other brewers. And now we're in the hundreds, and it just keeps getting bigger every day. So it's an exciting time. It's a unique product to be selling in a market that some say oversaturated. I say there's room for everybody. So it's a fun time to be selling beer.
Well, it's like the old adage, like a rising tide lifts all boats. So I mean, you know, the more beer that's introduced into the marketplace, the more interest there becomes in beer. And maybe if you're on shelf beside somebody else, at least everybody sort of gets a little bit of a taste of it. But it seems kind of crazy to me in the sense that, you know, we kind of saw this whole thing probably, ground zero of craft beer was probably like Portland, and it just kind of like blew up and went up the I-5. But I'm still impressed the fact that there are still breweries opening today. And it seems that even though it might seem like an oversaturated market, there's still room to grow.
Oh, absolutely. Always room to grow. For us, we're in a unique position because we didn't just come from nowhere. We've been, Big Rock has been around for over 32 years. And we opened our brewery on West 4th in Alberta, in Vancouver, just over 2 years ago. So we've migrated over this way. I like to say we were born in Alberta, born in Calgary. And we have 4 breweries in 3 provinces across the country. So we're in a bit of a unique spot because of that. But we also rub shoulders with the guys that are, you know, the tiny guys down the street that have just opened up and may or may not go anywhere outside of the 4 walls that they just built, or they may expand into other markets like we have. So you get a little bit of everything, I think, in BC right now.
We've had Jody Hamill, who is your brewmaster on the show in the past. And obviously, you know, you're a company that originated in Alberta. You've now got a strong presence here in BC, and I believe you're moving to other markets as well. But you still do, beside doing sort of some one-off beers that maybe Jody does here, you still brew some of your traditional brew out here. I think that's kind of a unique situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I like the segue, traditional.
The trad.
That's right. Big Rock Traditional Ale is the first recipe from Big Rock. We do brew that in BC. With the hard water table in Alberta, though, we have to treat the water before we brew it in BC, which is also a little interesting twist on that recipe, so that everything is consistent across the board. We also do brew our Grasshopper, our Crystal Weissen, and a few other recipes that were born in Alberta and are old standbys, part of our portfolio, in addition to some of Jody's recipes.
Now, you have brought some of your star beers today, including a couple of new beers, and there was actually 1 or 2 that we'll refer to that I'd never even heard of before. So tell us what's kind of new in the Big Rock family.
Okay, so we brought our Citradelic,
which is
your personal
my favorite.
Yes.
Okay.
This is one of Jody Hamill's recipes. It uses a Citra hop, and it is it's a light, bright, refreshing. It's an IPA. It's not overly aggressive. We just moved it into a 6-pack can format, which is why I brought it, because that's a little bit easier to cart around in the summertime. I also brought another one of Jody's recipes, which is the Kiwi Blonde Ale that we do in a 650 ml format. And it's kind of neat because it is not only kiwi, the fruit, but also kiwi as in New Zealand, because we source the topaz hop from New Zealand. Those are the 2 Jody's recipes that are both born in Vancouver. Some of it we brew here, and some of it we brew in Calgary.
Now, I don't want to ask any deep, dark secrets, but I'm always curious to talk to people because not everything that's introduced is an immediate success. In fact, sometimes you need to like call time of death on some things, because especially when you're talking about like one-off beers. But what's the process like, generally speaking, in a brewery? I won't speak specifically to Big Rock, but in a brewery, like, is there some sort of like a think tank? Is there like an in-house focus group where the brewmaster will say, hey guys, I got this, like try it out? and it's like it either hits or misses. Does that actually happen?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
It does.
I think, I don't know what time of the day you're supposed to start drinking beer. I don't sit around drinking every day. But Jody will come up with a little glass of something he has in tank, and he'll say, what do you think? Give me something. We have a couple people in the building that he'll try things on. He usually doesn't bring something to us if he's not happy with it. He doesn't bring us something and go, oh, this is terrible. Sure. But, you know, in Calgary, at our main facility, we have a marketing team. We have several individuals that go through a whole process of tasting, and everything's a community effort. Big Rock is a really supportive, sort of community-based company, I found, where even from naming a beer to the artwork that goes on a label, to the actual recipes themselves, there's a lot of input from a lot of different departments, which is really fun. Because
you're in two distinctly different markets, two distinctly different provinces, is it fair to say that if something works in BC, it's going to work in Alberta, or vice versa, or not? Like, are they different, or are we similar? It's a very loaded question.
I like to say that we are more the same than we are different when it actually comes down to it. So if we have our marketing department go and they pull X number of people and they do sorts of marketing research, at the very, very end, and I think that's true across Canada when you talk to craft beer drinkers or beer drinkers in general, that we are more the same than we are different. However, there's purchasing habits are different, the economies are different, flavor profiles change. A lot of the trends are born here if they've moved up the coast. However, there's certain trends that are born in Alberta that move out this way in other parts of the country or other parts of, from the US and whatnot. So it's hard to say. We do treat the provinces quite similar, though there has to be tweaks, because there's certain things that go over, like they go like wildfire in Calgary, that people in Vancouver just go, I have no idea why you just gave me that.
Okay, one final question, Megan, is I'm a hoppy guy. Would you say BC is a hoppy province?
It's a very hoppy province, yes, I would say, yes it is.
Okay, how can people find the Big Rock Brewery tasting room?
They can find us at 310 West 4th, on West 4th at Alberta, which is easy to remember.
Yeah.
And I'm there upstairs if anybody wants to come say hi and have a pint.
She knows her beers. Pleasure to see you. Thank you so much. There is more Brew on Tap coming up.
Host hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap, provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant-Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew on Tap, provided by Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Irish food and beer, yeah, it happens. It's called the Fork Hill House Irish Bistro in downtown Vancouver, where we recently took our cameras for Brew on Tap. This is BC Brew on Tap as we take the craft beer show on the road, always trying to find ways to pair beer with exotic cuisine. Jeff Lenz is the co-owner of the Fork Hill House Irish Bistro. It's a long-standing location in Vancouver's downtown core, recently reopened as an Irish cuisine place. Now, when we think of Irish, we generally think of Irish pub, and there's no shortage of them in the greater Vancouver area.
You're right.
You took it to a whole other level. What was the reason behind that?
Well, my wife and I have been looking to get into our own restaurant for quite some time, and we looked at a spot and we realized that it was the right location, but not the right branding. And so the wheels started turning, and you know, my wife's family has a strong history of food coming from Ireland. And so I looked at my wife and I said, well, why don't we open an Irish restaurant? Not an Irish pub, but an Irish restaurant. She said it was crazy. So, but the seed was planted. 6-7 months of brainstorming, and we started throwing around cuisine ideas and how we would take an Irish spot and theme it as a restaurant. And it's all about delivering on service, right, with upscale food with an Irish twist.
Okay, now I'm well familiar, being Irish myself, I'm well familiar with Irish pubs and the traditional pub fare and how it pairs with beers. What are we starting with here? Because we're going to have tried 3 relatively unique dishes. What do we have here?
Okay, so these are our Yorkies. So most Yorkies you'd see with beef and gravy. Ours, we do everything in-house. So these are fresh baked Yorkies with our house-made corned beef and house-made sauerkraut and the horseradish cream on top.
And what are you pairing this up with beer-wise? Because again, you have all Irish or largely Irish beers on tap.
Mostly
here.
Irish, yeah.
Okay, so what is this?
Okay, so this is relatively new to the Vancouver market. This is Hop House 13. It's an Irish lager made by Guinness in Dublin. So it's lager with a kick. It's got a little bit of citrus to it, and a little bit of fruitiness to it as well. So that's going to pair very well with the fluffy, light Yorkie style dish and the veg with the sauerkraut.
Okay.
So it's match made to be.
We will enjoy in due time. Well, Jeff, every time you think of Irish cuisine, you think of what pairs with Irish cuisine, and the most notable Irish drink, of course, would have to be Guinness.
Guinness, yes.
So I'm going to start with the beer. How much Guinness does the typical Irish establishment go through?
It's a national pastime. Obviously, with us here, that is one of our best-selling beers.
Of course.
And there's a very strict guideline to how you pour a Guinness and how you serve a Guinness.
We were joking about that because there was a bar somewhere that got roasted on social media because they just had this sloppily poured Guinness and they just got roasted over it.
Particularly in Ireland.
In
there
Ireland,
was
of
an
course.
uproar across the country.
Okay, so this, you said, takes what, 3 minutes to pour?
It's 3 minutes for the perfect pour.
Right.
And you want the beautiful cream head.
Yep.
And the recipe speaks for itself.
That looks like it needs not to be touched. That should just be revered. So now I ask you, you've got everything on this plate. How could you, does Guinness go with everything?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what do we have here?
Okay, so we have our cheese and chocolate plate, and well, let's start with the cheese because that's the ideal pairing with the beer here, and let's go straight to the Guinness cheddar.
Guinness cheddar.
Okay, so this is it's out of Dublin, and it's Guinness infused cheese. It's a dark, richer cheese, which is a match made in heaven with Guinness, obviously, because there's Guinness in it.
Okay, so you've gone from cheese to chocolate and virtually everything in between, and it all pairs with Guinness.
Yes.
Jeff Lenz from the Fork Hill House Irish Bistro, newly opened in downtown Vancouver. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Drew.
Cheers. More BC Brew on tap coming up. Welcome back to BC Brew on Tap. We always like to explore and just see exactly how versatile beer is. Alex Dewar is the general manager of the Fork Hill House Irish Bistro in Vancouver. Nice to see you. How are you?
Hello. Good. Nice
You're
to
a bartender
see you.
as well as a manager.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm also the marketing manager and just kind of handle everything.
Okay. So, as in an Irish-themed place, obviously Irish beers are prevalent on tap here.
Yeah.
But we're going to take it a little bit different today because we're going to introduce a local craft beer that's going to pair with Jameson whiskey. Darren Mooney is the brand ambassador. Darren, how are you, buddy?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay, so how adaptable is whiskey with beer in terms of like a cocktail from your experience?
From my experience, the two of them always go hand in hand. I think there's always been a history with whiskey and beer, and it lends itself, certainly coming from the same ingredients on a lot of cases. But definitely with Irish whiskey, I would say Jameson in particular is very versatile. Naturally, I have a bias.
We tend to. Okay, Alex, from the bar perspective, are beer cocktails a thing in an Irish-themed restaurant?
Well, I think it's been really interesting to see the progression of cocktails in general in the past 5-10 years. Just the emergence of the craft cocktail community and how people have been playing with ingredients. First, it was just trying to try different herbs and spices, and now people are realizing that a lot of flavor comes in these beers already, and incorporating that into the cocktails can just be a natural step.
Well, there's two schools of thought because there's people that are traditionalists, like, just give me a beer. But there's other people that want to kind of push the envelope. Now, we brought Darren into the equation today because as the brand ambassador for Jameson, and first of all, for those that don't know, what exactly does a brand ambassador do for a spirit?
Basically, I drink most of the Jameson in BC, I would say.
Keeping the Jamie alive in British Columbia. Okay, I like.
No, we're really out there as kind of the face and the eyes and the ears of the brand on the ground. Naturally, you can tell from my accent that I'm from Kelowna.
You're the real deal from Kelowna. There you go. I like that.
So so they sent us over here kind of to get a feel for how Jameson's doing on the ground and what the feedback is from everybody.
Okay, now you decided to make a beer cocktail, but rather than go with something Irish-themed beer-wise, you're going with something award-winning and local.
Absolutely, always. So the guys from the Delta, the Four Winds IPA I'm going with today is a great beer. The BC beer scene is incredible.
Yeah.
I always say go Irish for your whiskey and go local with your beer.
I like that concept.
So.
Okay, so what are you going to make for us, by the way?
So today we're going to do a kind of riff on an IPA fizz, which is going to be called the Thin Fizzy.
Keeping the Irish alive. I like that.
One of the best ever bands in the world, Thin Lizzy.
Okay.
So we're going to be using Jameson Caskmates, and Jameson Caskmates is actually Jameson whiskey finished in craft stout barrels. So just that interaction for 6 months with the stout barrels, get some of that stout residue. I gave it to a bartender last year, and he was like, "Darren, this tastes like Jameson and Nesquik had babies." So a lot of the like malty chocolate notes. It's gorgeous.
I'm just trying to imagine if I had a barrel of Jamesons, I couldn't keep it sitting there for 6 months. I think it'd be gone. But okay, so while Darren makes the drink for us, Alex, in an Irish restaurant, obviously Irish beers are prevalent. Irish whiskey is a big thing too, right?
Oh yeah, if you look on the shelf behind us, we've got endless shelves of Irish whiskey and more coming along as they pop up. We're trying to fill up the shelves with as much Irish imports.
Now,
as we
obviously,
can.
we do an emphasis on this show on the local craft beer industry, and I know that the local distilled spirits industry is getting there as well. And there's a couple of players already. Central City, for example, has done a whiskey. Do you see that that's going to take off more, like with more and more locally distilled spirits? Do you think that as a result there will be more and more beer cocktails made? Do you think?
I think so. I think as people are pushing the envelope, as time goes on with the cocktails, and we have more and more fun, exciting flavors coming out, of course, that's a natural step with people to incorporate that.
Okay. So, Darren, explain what you've done so far. You've literally, poured some Jameson in there. Okay.
Done.
Okay. Now what do we have a sprinkle of? What is that?
So this is some Western Haskap bitters from the lovely guys at Bittered Sling. Okay. Some local bitters again. So we've just taken really some Jameson Caskmates and some banana liqueur, which is going to give that kind of, with the IPA, is going to give some of that really creamy mouthfeel and that kind of, that velvetyness. So it's a very simple cocktail. So you literally stir it up a little bit.
Okay. Is there going to be some shaking coming up?
No, actually, you can shake this if you want, but I figured I'm making enough noise as it is. Okay. So I figured we could just go with this. So
in the food world, once you prepare something, it's called plating. When you're making something of a cocktail variety with beer in it, is it still called plating?
Drinking.
Drinking. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see how this all shakes down, and this of course is the Thin Fizzy. Okay.
Fizzy.
Okay. And is this an original creation? Is this a
it's
long
just kind of a riff on an IPA fizz. So you're just going to want to put a lot of ice in there. It's definitely a summer drink. It's quite sweet. Get a lot of ice, and you're going to want about 40 milliliters of Jameson Caskmates, about 15 milliliters of banana liqueur, and then you're simply going to top that up with some IPA.
From Four Winds.
From Four Winds, get some of that nice fizz going. And as I say, just really sweet, quite refreshing, lovely on a summer's day. And you're going to garnish that with a nice, gorgeous, sexy wedge of grapefruit.
Okay. Where do you get sexy
nice
grapefruit in this town? Like, do you ask for sexy grapefruit, or?
Okay. There you go, guys.
There you go, the Thin Fizzy. Now, this is made with Jameson Caskmates and Four Winds, the IPA from Four Winds. You think this could be a star on the menu here?
Oh yeah, well, if I don't go through all the Jamesons first, if that gets in there.
There you go, the Thin Fizzy from Fork Hill House Irish Bistro, newly opened in downtown Vancouver. More BC Brew on Tap coming up.
Post hair services for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap, provided by Bailey Murphy of Avant Garde Hair Studio in Yaletown at 1075 Mainland Street. For a list of services, call 604-688-1986 or online avantgardehair.com. Location services for BC Brew on Tap, provided by Mahoney and Sons at Canada Place. For a list of locations, visit mahoneyandSons.com.
Welcome back to Brew on Tap from Mahoney & Sons at Canada Place. Our old buddy Jay Schreiber.
Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Mr. Smarty Pints. Always a pleasure, sir.
Yeah, great to be here, Ben.
This usually signifies the end of the program, but
It
by
is,
no means the last part of the program. It's probably one of the best parts because you get a chance to introduce me to things that, you know, heretofore I may not be aware of. Now,
For sure.
I understand today you're going to give me the best of.
Absolutely.
The best of what?
Well, Joe, for the last few episodes we've done, I realized, we've never really done a whole best of series, and for me, I thought to myself, what would I include in a best of list? So I've separated the beers by category. This is the first installation. We're going to do another one later on to feature some more mainstream beers. But I thought this one I'd focus on some unique beers that you can find. Now, in order to qualify for this list, I said to myself, it'd have to be something that is available in wherever there is a good collection of BC craft beer in a liquor store. And it has to be a year-round beer. So no seasonal beers, no limited releases, a beer that a brewery is identified with as one of their core lineup beers.
Okay, let me jump in right there because I want to ask you, I mean, I know in your capacity as a beer guy, you travel around a lot.
For sure, yeah.
Is there a pretty good representation of craft beer in most stores that you go to today?
I would say over the last 3 years, which is the brackets, I would say this big craft beer boom has happened in BC. All the stores have only grown their craft beer section. There's been no shrinkage in craft beer shelf space and craft beer representation. So absolutely, I would say in most liquor stores you would go to, I would say you would see a better craft beer section than you would have, say, 5 years ago.
Okay, so I'm curious to see where you start. So this is the best of BC part one.
Part one, exactly.
Okay,
so these are some of the more interesting styles of beers that you would find. So in what I would call the fruit beer and wheat beer category, I had to go to my old friends at Fugs and Warlock from Richmond, and I went with their Mango Wit. It is both a fruit beer and a wheat beer. It is available all year round. Wit is a Belgian style, and it takes from a lot of the Belgian yeast that it uses, and also the wheat malts that it has. This is a very drinkable beer. Mostly, I would drink this beer in the summertime, but it is a year-round beer for me.
And this kind of follows up with they're probably best known for the last strawberry wit. This is kind of like the mango version of that.
For sure. And the strawberry wit is another popular one from them. But I felt like I felt like for the exposure, for the flavors that they have, for the style of the beer, I think that mango really hits the mark.
Okay, I can see by the back of the bottle here. I'm getting better at this. So we're going from Richmond/Steveston to Delta.
Correct.
I can see Four Winds. So what do we got from Four Winds?
So Four Winds, this is Necturus. Necturus is
that's an award winner.
It's an award winner. It's a great beer from them. Now this beer started as what we would call a limited release, where they did a certain amount and then would just sell through it and move on to the next style of beer. But it was so immensely popular, they decided to make it a year-round beer. It is a sour beer. So for my taste, the best sour beer coming out of BC that you can buy all year round is Necturus from Four
High
Winds.
praise indeed, sir.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving along, what do we got?
I've decided to go with my friends in Burnaby from Daggerad Brewing Company. Now this is the European and more specifically to this style, Belgian influenced beers. Their style is Daggerad Platz is a plaza in Belgium where head brewer Ben got his influence from for making this style of beer. That beer that he's come out with in this particular incarnation is what we call a Brun. And Bruns are generally a little bit darker, a little bit maltier, and very rich, which I feel accurately represents a European-style Abbey Ale and some of the niche European beers we have here.
Wouldn't it make sense to be in Boston and come up with a Boston Brune? No? No, okay. Okay.
Those are bears, Joe.
Okay, finally, this doesn't look beer. What is this?
No, that's actually not beer, Joe. Believe it or not, that is a cider.
Cider.
BC has a very good cider scene as well coming up. So I wanted to feature at least one. This is from the Okanagan, from Coston, BC. This is Twisted Hills Cider. Cider is a little bit different than beer in that instead of using malts as the base sugar, it uses apples as the base sugar. So the apples are fermented to create the alcohol. This is a very, very good, very balanced cider, and I think it accurately represents what you would get from like a British cider too.
Good job, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Smarty Pints,
Thanks for
Mr.
having
Jay
me.
Schreiber. That's a wrap for BC Brew on Tap. We always encourage you to enjoy all that British Columbia has to offer, but please remember to plan a safe ride home and drink responsibly. We'll see you next time.
Clothing for Joe Leary and BC Brew on Tap supplied by Red Dragon Apparel. RedDragonApparel.com. For BC Brew on Tap, this is Mike Schaefer.